We may all heard about the boiler and pressure vessel codes by American Society of Mechanical Engineers. These codes are the set of rules which shall be followed in design and construction of pressure vessel and boilers. These codes are formulated by American Boiler and Pressure Vessel Committee, which is established in the year 1911 by ASME. This committee later split it into 11 individual committees, each one dedicated itself completely to 11 specific areas like power boilers, pressure vessels, materials, nuclear, so on. Now, let us discuss the accident which led to the establishment of the Boiler and Pressure Vessel Committee and the Boiler and Pressure Vessel Code. In the year 1905, March 20, R.B. Grover Shoe Factory in Brockton, in Massachusetts, one of the prominent shoe manufacturer in town, they manufactured a famous shoes brand, Emerson Shoes. The Grover Shoe Factory was heated using steam radiators, with the steam being produced by coal-fired steel boilers installed in a brick boiler house. When the fourth floor was added to the factory, the original boiler was replaced by a larger one. And the old boiler, 17 feet long and 6 feet in diameter, was left in place as a backup. Since the new boiler could generally meet the factory's demands on its own, the old one was seldom used, and when used, was used reluctantly. Grover's chief engineer David Rockwell, who had a first-class engineer's license and 12 years of experience, did not trust it. The new boiler had to be flushed out as part of its regular maintenance, so Rockwell had put the old boiler back into service temporarily. Early that cold damp Monday, he fed its coal fire and put the boiler to work heating the building for arriving day shift workers. At 7:45 a.m. the plant manager telephoned Rockwell to ask about some strange noises coming from the radiators along one wall. Rockwell had just stepped out of the building, but his assistant assured the manager that everything was in order. A few minutes later, the old boiler exploded, rocketing up through 3 floors in a roof. The flying boiler knocked over an elevated water tower at one end of the building, and its full tank smashed through the roof, causing that end of the building to immediately collapse, with the floors pancaking and the walls falling in on top of them. Many workers who survived the initial explosion and collapse were trapped by broken beams and heavy machinery. Burning coals thrown from the boiler's fire pit landed throughout the debris, starting fires that were fed by broken gas lines. The factory's more than 300 windows, now blown out, created a chimney effect in the parts of the factory still standing, resulting in a fire hot enough to melt iron pipes and radiators. The wooden floors, treated nightly with linseed oil to keep the dust down, burned quickly. High winds helped spread the fire to nearby storage sheds and neighboring buildings including a hardware store and a rooming house. The Campello neighborhood's district firehouse shared a city block with the factory and its firefighters arrived quickly, as did many local citizens. Using long timbers as levers, they were able to lift some of the wreckage and rescue some workers before the flames reached them. Local newspapers recount many acts of heroism in the rescues made that day. But barrels of naphtha, a volatile industrial solvent related to gasoline, were stored in a wooden shed directly behind the boiler house. The shed was set afire by the burning coals, and the naphtha exploded, throwing sheets of flame onto the wreckage and driving rescuers away. The total casualties were more than 50 workers, including Chief Engineer Rockwell. 150 workers were injured, and 100 escaped. Reason for explosion. One Grover executive speculated that the explosion might have been caused by a recently installed safety device. C.E. Roberts, a manager of Hartford's steam boiler, stated, "So far as I have been able to learn there appears to have been no carelessness in the handling of the boiler, and the explosion, in my opinion, was caused by a defect that was impossible to discover." On March 29 the district attorney stated that the accident was due to a hidden defect in the boiler and that no criminal charges would be filed. As to civil liability, 2 weeks later a judge ruled that the explosion was caused by a defect that could not have been discovered and held the company blameless. He also found that the various insinuations made against Chief Engineer Rockwell were untrue. The American Society of Mechanical Engineers, ASME, had been founded in 1880 in response to the boiler explosions that had become common as the use of steam power expanded during the Industrial Revolution. Between 1880 and 1890 there were over 2,000 boiler explosions in the United States. By 1890, some 100,000 boilers were in service, many of them unsafe. Inspections were rare, and operating guidelines almost non-existent. Steam pressures were regularly cranked up to produce additional work. The Grover disaster, coupled with another fatal Massachusetts shoe factory boiler explosion happened in the following year in Lynn, brought new cries for improved industrial safety. A new governor demanded prompt action, and a board of boiler rules was formed, drafting a simple 3-page set of rules. After the ASME helped overcome manufacturer objections to needless government interference, Massachusetts passed an act relating to the operation and inspection of steam boilers in 1907. The Massachusetts laws eventually led to passage of a national boiler safety code. Later 1911, Boiler Pressure Vessel Committee was established by ASME. This is the brief history of Grover disaster which paved the way to boiler and pressure vessel codes, as we know today.